Hello and welcome back to Leader Up, a podcast of Army Management Staff College. Leader Up is a professional conversation where we discuss a broad range of leadership and leader development topics with an emphasis on the Army civilian professional. I'm your host, David Howey. On today's episode of Leader Up, we're going to talk about something called Project Athena. So all you folks out there in the Leader Up audience, you might be asking yourself, what is Project Athena and how will it affect me as a member of the Army Civilian Corps? And on today's episode of Leader Up, we're going to enlighten you about the answers to those questions and many more regarding Project Athena. Our guests today, I'm going to introduce them in just a moment, are two representatives from CAPL. And CAPL is the Center for the Army Profession and Leadership. And that's an organization that is here at Fort Leavenworth. And if you don't know this, CAPL is the outcome of combining two organizations that existed previously. And those two organizations were the Center for Army Leadership, which was here at Fort Leavenworth, and the Center for the Army Profession and Ethic. And those two organizations were merged into a single organization here at Fort Leavenworth. And so our guests today are from that organization, CAPL. And our first guest today from CAPL is Ms. Heidi Stoetzel, who is a program analyst and the Project Athena lead for civilians and warrant officers. So Heidi, thank you for being with us today on Leader Up.
Thank you, David.
All right. And our second guest, also from CAPL, is Dr. James Daugherty, who is a senior research psychologist from CAPL. Dr. Daugherty, thank you also for being with us today on Leader Up.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, well, let's just jump right in. And I think, Heidi, I'm going to start with you with this question. Just explain to our Leader Up audience, what is Project Athena?
So first of all, David and AMSC, we'd like to thank you, myself and Dr. Daugherty, to be on the Leader Up podcast. On behalf of CAPL, we're honored to have this opportunity to tell you about Project Athena. So to get to the heart of this discussion, what is Project Athena? Project Athena consists of a progressive series of developmental assessments intended to enable self-awareness, encourage self-development, promote readiness for positions of greater authority and responsibility, and finally enhance the Army's culture of assessments. All cohorts, NCOs, warrant officers, and most importantly, civilians participate in Project Athena at their in-resident PME courses.
Okay, and I would like you to talk a little bit more about, from the Project Athena standpoint, about self-awareness, why that's important for leaders, not just leaders in uniform, but also for those of us who are part of the Army Civilian Corps.
So this is a great question, David. You're going to hear Dr. Daugherty and myself say self-awareness and self-development a lot in our conversation today. First of all, what is self-awareness? It means seeing and understanding yourself relative to how others perceive you. Self-awareness is important for all Army leaders, and as being self-aware is directly linked to leader effectiveness. It means you have fewer blind spots to understand yourself and others better. And research at CAPL suggests that leader effectiveness is an outcome of being better self-aware and is strongly related to unit readiness, morale, and performance.
And what is the role of honesty in self-awareness, and what is the role of honesty in these Project Athena assessments?
Now, this is a principal factor for students taking assessments. Honesty is key because these assessments are directly for the students. The assessments are developmental in nature, which means they are separate and distinct from being included in the Army Performance Evaluation System, for us as civilians, DP MAP. Project Athena, this is deliberate in the separation. The feedback results belong solely to the students to support their development as a leader. So if the student is not honest with themselves on these assessments, it will mean nothing. So you will get out what you put into Project Athena.
And I want to talk a little bit more about, and I'm going to switch over to you, Dr. Daugherty. I want to talk a little bit more about how the results of these assessments, how they're used. So if I'm someone who is taking one of these assessments, and Heidi talked about how important it is to be honest. So I input all my responses to the different assessments. How does that information get used?
Yeah, David, we live in the information age, so, we leave kind of a digital footprint just in our daily lives, and Project Athena really focuses on assessments, so it's really driving that data production. And so I think your question is an important one. Everybody wants to know how their data is being used, and I think what's important to keep in mind with Project Athena assessment data is that it belongs to the student. That means that your boss, your boss's boss, your boss's boss's boss can't ask you to provide that assessment feedback. What they can do is ask about something like an individual development plan that you've created with input from the Project Athena assessments, but the assessment results belong to the student. And so no one has access to those student level results except the student themselves. So, it's also important with Project Athena to remember that the assessments that students complete are not used for hiring or promoting or selective purposes. It's purely for self-development, and that focus is important to make sure that people know how their data is being used.
And I want to go back, Dr. Daugherty, to a phrase that Heidi used earlier, and it's this phrase, and I've seen it on your website, culture of assessment. Just, if you can, talk a little bit more about what that means and what that means for the Army civilian profession.
Sure. Yeah. The culture of assessments is a term taken from the Army People Strategy, specifically the Military Implementation Plan. And so this term is really associated with talent management efforts in the Army. Now, as I mentioned before, Project Athena is not a talent management program. It's designed for leader self-development. But talent management is being done at the battalion and brigade level, and so a growing number of senior military leaders are completing assessments that are being incorporated into selection decisions. The idea with that process and that culture of assessments is to embrace assessment-driven decision-making. Now, but for Project Athena and for our Army civilians, Project Athena, again, is for self-developmental purposes. So what Project Athena does relative to the culture of assessments is it familiarizes civilians and soldiers with this process of completing assessments and using those assessment results to drive self-developmental goals.
And let me go back to you, Heidi. I did look at the Project Athena website, and there was something that really caught my eye, and it's something called a leader self-development tool. And can you just tell us a little bit more about what that is and how it might be used?
So the leader self-development tool is a really cool product we have available for not only students executing Project Athena, but anyone in the Army. And this resource can be found at capl.army.mil. The leadership self-development tool targets assessment feedback by cohort and helps participants find developmental resources linked to areas measured in the Project Athena assessments. So a perfect example is myself. I've already completed all the CES courses, and I still want to work on some developmental communication skills. So I have the ability on the Access Direct Resources tab to use that tab, and in the share box, I typed in communication skills. What that then did is an array of tools, including training session on improving communication, a video about listening more actively in the workplace, as well as TED Talks and other smaller commercial assessments, which will help enable my ability to work on my communication skills. And that's the cool tool that we have available there for, again, all students in PME taking Project Athena, as well as anyone in the military that's interested in finding more resources.
And you really kind of piqued my interest with communication, because I used to teach in the basic course and intermediate course, and that was something that came up a lot, was a need to improve communication skills. And so let me, Dr. Daugherty, I want to ask you, Heidi talked about communication. So what are the other kind of areas that Project Athena will give me feedback on?
So right now, Project Athena is comprised of 13 different assessments. Now, most students, all students, won't take all 13 of those assessments. And some of those assessments are owned by the Army, and others are commercial assessments that you can get on the internet. Now, with all these assessments, they're either cognitive in nature, they're personal in nature, so those are characteristics that describe you, or they are leadership-based, so how you provide purpose, direction, and motivation to others to accomplish the Army's goals. All of the assessments have been selected due to their link to the Army Leadership Requirements Model, which is found in our Army Doctrine, ADP 622 and FM 622. So there is those linkages to Army Doctrine, and Army Doctrine tells all Army leaders, civilians and soldiers, what they should know, what they should be, and what they should do. And so the cognitive assessments focus on the knowing, the personal assessments focus on the being, and the leadership assessments really focus on the doing.
And I'd like to talk about another item two items that I saw on your website, Dr. Daugherty, and that's Leader 180 and Leader 360. Just what those are and why they're valuable, and how they are similar or dissimilar to the old MSAF program.
Yeah, great question. So both the Leader 180 and the Leader 360 are multi-source assessments, meaning that they seek to compare how you see yourself with how other people see you. For the Leader 180, the comparison is between yourself and your peers. The Leader 360 provides a comparison between yourself, subordinates, peers, and superiors. So these assessments are a great way to get feedback and to strengthen your self-awareness. So in essence, these assessments allow leaders to get a better understanding of where they think they stand and where people think they stand. And ideally, a self-aware leader is going to have a great deal of convergence between how other people think they perform and how they think they perform. What's really valuable about these types of assessments is in those situations where you can have a certain leadership behavior that you think you're doing really well, but unfortunately everybody else sees you acting in a way that's much different than you see yourself. Getting this kind of feedback is an opportunity to calibrate your understanding of your leadership effectiveness relative to those others. And so, if I may, let me give you an example. So I completed a 360 myself. This was a few years ago in preparation of attending the Advanced Leader course. And so through that 360, I also engaged in some coaching that was available at that time. And one of the key insights from that 360 experience was the fact that I could stand to speak up more in meetings and when ideas were being passed around. And that was feedback that I needed to see in hard copy in written words in order for it to really sink in. And so I don't know that I would have received that feedback otherwise. And so that really gave me an opportunity to strengthen my leadership through this receiving feedback from others. And
that goes back to what we kind of talked about earlier, which is the importance of honesty, both from the person who's taking the assessment, and in this case, when you take Leader 180 or Leader 360 and ask for feedback to get honest feedback, what the person needs to hear, not just what they want to hear, what's going to tamp down the conflict. They need to hear the absolute truth. And thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. It's a very powerful example. And
and David, on that note, I mean, the process itself allows you to get feedback from anybody that has a CAT card. So, there's always this impression that people cherry pick who provides feedback to them in these multi-source assessments like the Leader 180 and Leader 360. The problem with that is, if you're cherry picking and your assessors and choosing to have individuals provide feedback that are only going to provide positive feedback, that almost really defeats the entire process of getting that feedback that's really going to give you insights you don't already have and challenge you to become a better leader.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of what a good friend of mine, Dr. Bob Brunk, who's our deputy director, used to say in the classroom, do you want to look good or do you want to be good? So that candor is how the path to actually being good. Thank you for sharing that. That's fascinating. And I want to come back to you, Heidi, and my favorite question about Project Athena. Why was the goddess Athena chosen to be the face of this effort?
Due to the fact Athena was the Greek goddess noted for strategic warfare, wisdom, and learning, Athena favored cunning intelligence over brute strength. So Project Athena signifies the disciplined preparation of students reflecting and becoming more self-aware. And so that's the logic of the goddess Athena and Project Athena.
Okay. And let me, Dr. Daugherty, let me ask you, just clarify, y'all have kind of, you both have kind of addressed this, but I want to make sure everybody knows it. Project Athena is available for people who are going through institutional training, but it's also available for anyone, like you said, who has a CAT card, not necessarily going through training, but is just a person out there in the Army Civilian Corps or the Army Green Suiters also. So is that am I correct on that?
Yeah, it is. You are correct. And so right now, Project Athena assessments are delivered in a proctored environment through those resident professional military education courses or CES courses that civilians take. And so when a student arrives at their course, they're going to be given access codes that they use to gain access to the assessments and complete them online. And online is also where they'll get their feedback reports and they can print those out or save them to PDF, that kind of thing. And so that's a primary mechanism on how students will get that feedback from Project Athena. However, there is also currently the Leader 180 and the Leader 360 that are available through the Army Enterprise Assessment System, AEAS, and you can launch a Leader 180 or a Leader 360 without being in Project Athena. And so those are available right now to civilians and soldiers, anybody with a CAT card.
Okay, and we'll get the website for that and post it. It'll be posted. Leader Up audience, we'll post that in the show notes for this episode. So let's kind of take it down to kind of where the rubber meets the road. Let's say that Dr. Daugherty, I'm a GS 12 or 13 supervisory budget analyst at an Army Depot, Red River or Picatinny or someplace like that, and I supervise 5 or 6 people. And we're number crunching, and it's September and it's end of the year, and I've got all this stuff going on. What will Project Athena do for me as a supervisor, and what will it do for the people that work for me, and how will it help that in that kind of an environment? What would be the utility of Project Athena?
So I'm hearing you ask basically two questions. So let me start with what that supervisor can gain from Project Athena. So right now they could log into the AEAS system and start a Leader 180, Leader 360. They could reach out to those subordinates to provide feedback as well as their peers and their superiors. And that's going to help them get a good indication of their leadership effectiveness from those different perspective groups. That's something that they could do right now today. That's an immediate benefit. Now, if that supervisor also attends a CES course, they will also then be able to take the additional battery of assessments that Project Athena offers and complete those to gain additional self-awareness and self-insight. For the individuals working underneath that supervisor, so this is kind of the second part of your question, if those subordinates attend a CES course, they too will be able to complete Project Athena assessments. And so they'll get that feedback and that insight from that process. Now, as I mentioned earlier, though, that supervisor who sends the subordinates off to CES might be really excited to see these Project Athena assessment results. But remember, those belong to those individuals, so that request can't be granted. However, those subordinates could provide those results, assessment results, if they wanted to have a discussion with their supervisor. So they can, but they don't have to. So just to clarify and reemphasize that, because I think those assessment results can feel very personal to some individuals, and they shouldn't feel compelled to have to share those results. Now, as a direct result or product of completing those assessments, those subordinates may develop an individual development plan, or IDP, that incorporates some of that Project Athena feedback. That IDP is something that those subordinates should expect to share with their supervisor and say, hey, I took these assessments and they told me this. And because they told me this, I really want to focus on that. And this is how I'm going to get better at that. And so there are opportunities for Project Athena to help from both angles, both the supervisor and from those individuals being supervised.
And so me as an employee, if I do an Athena assessment, I can choose to share it with my supervisor, and that will only improve our relationship and help develop maybe things in the workplace that I can do to work on challenges that I have. But the Army wants to keep a wall between these self-development assessments and, let's say, the DP map process. And so the supervisor is not supposed to be able to direct the employee to provide their results to them. And if they do get them, it's voluntary.
Yeah, it's solely up to that individual whether they share those results or not. That superior or boss's boss can't ask to see those results.
Okay, well we're coming to the end of our time with these two guests from CAPL, and I want to come back to you, Heidi, and just what else is there about Project Athena that I haven't asked about that you think our Leader Up audience might want to know?
Well, first and foremost, David, on behalf of Mission Command Center of Excellence and CAPL, Dr. Daugherty and I want to thank you for this opportunity to talk about Project Athena. And in closing, we would like to ask future CES students these 3 questions. Are you good as you need to be? Are you willing to be completely honest with yourself? And 3, are you willing to put in the work to improve your self-awareness? If you answered yes to any of these questions, Project Athena is for you. And thank you again, David. Don't forget to check out capl.army.mil for Project Athena resources. Thanks, David.
All right. Thank you. Dr. James Daugherty, thank you for being with us today on Leader Up.
My great pleasure. Thank you.
And Ms. Heidi Stoetzel, thank you also for being with us today on Leader Up.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And so, Leader Up audience, that's everything you need to know about Project Athena for now. And we've got the links posted with this episode, so they're there for you. And so are you willing to put in the hard work to become a better leader? That's the question, and you have to answer it. And that's all for this episode. This is your host, David Howey, and please join us again for another episode of Leader Up.
As always, if you have any questions or feedback or would like to learn more about our podcast, please check the description for our email and for our website. Thanks for listening.